Welcome to the Chairman's Circle. I'm Fulton County Commission Chairman Rob Pitts. I'm pleased to bring this program to you where we meet interesting people, talk about important issues, and give you a chance to weigh in on social media. On today's program, we're talking about a topic that few people want to talk about. It's the issue of suicide and its devastating impact on families and our community. It's also an issue Fulton's Chief Medical Examiner knows about all too well, and it's why I'm happy to have Dr. Jan Gorniak on our program today. Dr. Gorniak, first question.
Okay.
Your name is very interesting to me. I'm a language person, so names always interest me, and so I had a different impression of who was going to be on the show because we hadn't met when I saw your name. What's the origin of your name?
Well, obviously it's Polish, so it's not my given name, it's my married name.
What's your given name?
Thompson.
Where were you born?
The Bronx.
All right. Now, how would a girl from the Bronx end up being a medical examiner? I'm curious.
Okay, I would have
thought you would have been, a school teacher or a mathematician or some medical examiner.
Okay.
Start at the beginning.
At the beginning, like I said, grew up in the Bronx. My mother was very big into education, and I remember always wanting to be a physician. I didn't know what type of physician, but that's what I wanted to do, grow up and be a doctor. Before I went to medical school, I was an EMT in Pennsylvania for 5 years, and I thought I wanted to do emergency medicine, but I always loved forensics. My mother was a correction officer at Rikers Island. I used to sit in the courtroom during the summertime and watch people go to jail and watch arraignments. And so I liked the law side, but I liked the medicine side, and forensics pathology was the best way to combine both the love of the law and medicine.
So you were never frightened about, or scared about going, because I get a little wheezy every time I see them. Everybody watches those shows on TV, and when the sheet comes out and you look to see what it's going to look like, I'm still frightened, even on TV. So how did this all come about?
In the beginning, when I went to medical school and had to do anatomy class, it was kind of queasy.
Where'd you go to medical school?
I went to Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But during anatomy class, I was still, when we had all these dead cadavers there, it was more about the emotional side of it. So I learned to be a doctor first and do what I have to do, but it doesn't mean I don't get affected by death.
I got so many questions for you because I heard about you. I was just fascinated with the story. What are the responsibilities of a medical examiner?
So as the chief medical examiner,
Let me be real. No, there's a difference. Chief medical examiner, be clear.
Right, so as the chief medical examiner, I am the overseer of the whole office. Okay. So the charge and operations of the medical examiner is determine cause and manner of death. We investigate death, but it's just not just that. We have administrative staff, we have the mortuary staff that helps us in the autopsy room. So we have investigators that go out to the scene. So that's all encompassing of death investigation. But I believe we also wear a public health hat. So it's not only about determining cause and manner of death, it's about also getting out in the community and preventing deaths, preventing child death, preventing firearm deaths, preventing suicides.
So how do you, when you get a call, what happens? So walk me through the process.
Okay, so per the law, the code, there are certain deaths that have to be reported to us, and those are those sudden unexpected deaths.
So all deaths aren't reported to the medical examiner?
All deaths are not, only certain deaths, so sudden unexpected deaths. So any death by violence, whether it's homicide, suicide, accident, a young person who doesn't have a medical history that is significant for them to die. So those are the type of deaths that get reported, either from police or from the hospital. So anybody who dies in the emergency room, they're going to call us. And so sometimes, depending on the case, we respond to the scene, or we just do a phone investigation with the personnel at the hospital. So depending on whether it's a completely natural death, we decline jurisdiction back to that person's family physician. If it's not a natural death, or the person doesn't have a family doctor, or they haven't been to their doctor in 40 years, they're not on any medication, then we'll accept that into our office as we're going to sign the death certificate. So just like not everybody is reported, every dead person in the county isn't reported to us, not everybody who comes to the office gets an autopsy. Any of those mostly non-natural deaths will get an autopsy.
Okay, so the vehicle goes out, picks up the body, brings it back to you, then walk me through that.
So we discussed about whether that person needs an autopsy or not. So the only case...
Discuss what?
Discuss the circumstances of the case. So a 32-year-old white male found in the driver's seat of a car, unresponsive. EMS was called. They were pronounced dead. We notified next of kin. We determined he has no medical history, for example, high blood pressure or diabetes, but he does have a history of drug use. So we will do an autopsy on that case to determine his cause of death, including getting specimens for toxicology, and then we have to wait for
How does an autopsy work, though? I'm thinking about...
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure if all your viewers want to know exactly how an autopsy is done.
I want to keep it real. Tell me.
Okay, so an autopsy technically means to see for yourself. So we're doing a thorough examination of the body. Anything on the outside of the body, we're going to document hair color, eye color, tattoos, any injuries, any medical therapy.
Inside the body.
And then inside the body, we look at every single organ.
Where do you start?
Nope, we start in the chest. So we go from the chest organs and the abdomen.
Cut it open.
And then we look at
Take them out.
the brain, and then we look at the neck. Yes.
I'm proud of you. All right.
Well, thank you, thank you.
Suicides. It's my understanding that in the state of Georgia, and more specifically here in Fulton County, a number of suicides rather increasing.
That is correct.
Why is that?
Well, I wish I knew the answer why, and that's one thing that we can't answer at the medical examiner's office. But what we can do is educate people about what we're seeing. And this study came about because before I got here in September of 2016, there was a young African-American male who was found hanging in Piedmont Park. And
I remember that.
And everybody, to us as medical examiners, as the police, we understand why it was a suicide. But there was people that said, oh no, it can't be a suicide. And that's one thing that I learned when I was training in Cleveland, that black people don't hang themselves because of the correlation between lynching. So we decided to say, hey, we are being taught these myths. Where are they coming from? What do people really believe? I just read an article in the newspaper where the woman's child, African-American woman, her 13-year-old had died by suicide. And one of her friends even says, this doesn't happen, we don't do that. But we do. And so we wanted to dispel some myth besides black people don't hang themselves. We also heard that women, we like clean methods. So we're not going to use a firearm, we're going to die by using pills.
That's a myth also?
That's a myth. Or another myth is that our suicide rate increases during the holiday seasons. So we just wanted to look at our numbers to see, is that really true? But Dr. Geller, Rachel Geller, who was a trainee in the office last year, who's now an associate medical examiner in the office, she decided to take it one step further and actually do a survey. So we actually put a survey out through Fulton County website and also Twitter and Facebook. And she even did some in-person surveys and found out, well, what do people in our community actually believe?
So of the findings, have you drawn any conclusions from the findings as to why or who commits suicide? Right.
So we looked at from 2008 to 2017. Those were the cases. There was 1,057 cases of suicide in Fulton County in that 10-year period. So 1,057 cases. So we learned through the survey.
And I'm going to make an assumption now that the majority of those were non-black, non-African American. Is that accurate?
The majority of our suicides are with white male and females.
Okay. What ages?
The ages are the 30s. I believe it was like an average of like 42 point something age, 42.7. So it's not a bimodal. It's not like all young people and then on the other end. It's the most of it occurred in that period, that age, but we saw ages from 10 with our youngest in that 10-year period up to 98.
98.
Right. So we learned through the survey that our citizens, they are right about the myths, or some of them were disproved. That we thought, yeah, people believe that, you know, we thought a lot of people thought that notes were left, and actually they believe that less than 15% of people leave a note or a letter of intent, and our numbers show a third of the people that die by suicide in Fulton County leave a note of some sort.
Leave a note. I know this probably predates you. There's one very, very famous one here, and I won't mention the name, but never did leave a note, and there's always still rumors about why this happened to be a male, white male, very prominent person committed suicide. But what about methods of committing suicide?
Okay, the most common method is firearms across men, women, white, black, yes. And in the female population, it is firearms is the number one, followed by prescription drugs or drugs. So that myth is dispelled. That is not, women don't kill themselves by that. And then with men, it's firearms, followed by hanging, and then by drugs. And yes, black men do hang themselves. Okay,
pills?
Pills, prescription pills, whether it's opioids or benzodiazepines, the Valiums. So usually prescription drugs, not recreational drugs, but prescription drugs are what people use.
And you're finding more of that nowadays, or?
Not more, but it's the second common for women as how they would die by suicide.
The pills?
Yes.
Okay, and that's more of a north side issue, phenomenon, rather than a south side, I would assume.
You know, that's a great question. We didn't break down our data in that specific. Unfortunately, in our office, we don't have an epidemiologist or statistician.
You do not?
We do not.
Why?
It's just not part of our team.
Is it a budget issue, or?
Well, it can be a budget issue, but also it's now people are realizing what valuable data that the medical examiner's office holds.
Okay.
So questions like that are, well, can we break it down into geography of the county? We would love to do that. We just don't have the time or the personnel to actually really dive into that.
Okay, we're going to have to take a short break right now. When we come back, we'll continue talking with the chief medical examiner and also what role the chief medical examiner has to play with the upcoming Super Bowl. Stay with us. Welcome back. We've been talking with Fulton's Chief Medical Examiner, Dr. Jan Gorniak, about the study that she did on suicides and that her team commissioned. But we also want to talk about her role in the upcoming Super Bowl and mass casualties in general. So, with respect to the Super Bowl, what role will you be playing?
So,
if any, for that matter?
Yeah, we do have an important role. So it's all about being prepared. So anytime there's a big event anywhere where thousands of people are going to be in our city, in our county, we need to be prepared for any possibility of a mass casualty, mass fatality incident. For example, what happened in Vegas or in the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. So the Super Bowl is the big picture right now. So we're going to have all these people coming in, and we just have to be prepared just in case something happens.
So, but what does being prepared mean, though?
Being prepared is knowing where events are.
Yeah.
Also being prepared as in our own office. Do we have enough supplies? Do we have enough personnel? Where are we going to be?
So would you be buying more stuff and bringing more, or what, operating tables or more ambulances? What do you mean?
we can't change the structure of our building.
Okay.
But we just have to be prepared on how many.
We have DeKalb County you have a counterpart in DeKalb County, Cobb has one, and so forth. So y'all work together? Or?
We can, and we are in the process of getting a memorandum of understanding together. So if something does happen, that vice versa will be able to go help each other. They'll come help us. But if something happens during the Super Bowl, it's on Fulton County. So we have to
because of where the stadium is located.
Correct.
So you will be the top dog
in Fulton County.
Okay.
Correct.
And coordinating everything.
Correct. With as it pertains to mass fatalities. So if an incident happens in Fulton County, we have to be able to respond to the scene. You talked about equipment. We would have to be able to transport them. We have to be able to, if we reach capacity at our office for the number of bodies we can store there.
How many can you store at your office then?
Total, 94, and that includes a trailer that we have on site where we can actually move the trailer.
Where is your office? I mean, I don't need to know, but I'm just curious.
Our office is on Pryor Street across from the Juvenile Justice Center.
Okay. You can put 94, you can store 94 bodies.
We can store 94
back to the Super Bowl.
Right, so we can store 94 bodies. So we have to know that count. So every morning we also talk about how many bodies do we have in the office, because even though we're talking about specifically the Super Bowl, a mass fatality can happen at any moment. So when people hear mass fatality, they think about plane crashes, they think about an active shooter, and those are very important, but it could be a bus crash. You know what I mean? It could be a building collapse like 9/11. Those are considered mass fatalities, and so we have jurisdiction over those dead bodies, so we still have to be able to go and investigate at the scene. So we have to make sure that we have access into the scene. We have to make sure the scene is safe. So we're working with our police counterparts, our fire departments, just to make sure if there's any decontamination process that needs to happen before we bring our bodies back to the office. We have to make identification. We have to talk to families. So it's very important to prepare. We say not if, but when. And of all the events that we have here in Atlanta, it could be any day. I mean, you have the marathons, you have concerts, you had the Beltline and Lantern Parade. Mm-hmm. Those are opportunities, quote unquote, for something to happen, and we just have to be prepared to respond to that. And the most important thing that we have to do is reunify people with their loved ones. So the families come first. And why do we prepare? Because we only get one chance to get it right. So we have to make sure people are properly identified, whether it's through fingerprints or dental records. So there's a lot of moving pieces behind the scenes before we can reunify family members with their loved ones.
So all that you've talked about now, all of that takes place right in your office?
Yes, it does.
And you oversee all of that?
I do.
So if there were, let's just use our airport, for example, biggest, busiest, and the best in the world. I always say that because that's true. So let's say there were some mass casualty incident at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. What would happen?
Well, depending on what type of incident
now, that's
it
not,
was.
so that's just on an ordinary day, not like a Super Bowl where you've been planning.
Right.
Okay.
But
It's some random event, but mass event.
Right, but we plan every day.
Really?
Every day where the phone rings, that's why we do what we do on a daily basis. So when the plane crashes, we know what to do. We just need to multiply our resources in order to respond to that. So we're still going to respond maybe with not one investigator, but we have to have 3 investigators go.
Where does the personnel come from? Where do the extra vehicles come from?
Well, that's where the memorandum of understanding with the other medical examiners.
Not Super Bowl now, just
right,
a random.
No, every day.
This is every day.
Every day. Like I said, we don't know when it's going to happen, right? Something might happen before the Super Bowl, right? We never know. So we're already in talks with GBI and Cobb and DeKalb. So we already know that we're going to help each other if that happens.
So this being prepared is an ongoing, around-the-clock, 24-hour effort for you and your office.
Right, it is. But it's so much more than just what we do on a daily basis.
For instance?
So a plan, a mass fatality plan. We're talking about a
mass fatality what?
A mass fatality plan. So,
plan, okay.
So what we do every day, our standard operating procedures, our policies, our procedures, that's fine. But if the plane crashes, we have another plan that we pull off the shelf. Who do we call? I mean, the American Red Cross might have to be involved. The Atlanta Fulton County EMA, emergency management, has to be involved. So we're in communication with all those agencies, not on a daily basis, but we have their phone numbers. They know to call us. So we're in the process of beefing up our own plan while we're doing the Super Bowl plan. And we've had meetings with Fulton County Public Health, the state public health, trying to get a plan ready, which can be tweaked on a daily basis for us too. But once again, when we talked about it in the previous segment, I'm doing that. I have another, my deputy director is helping with that, but it's so much more than what my expertise. Mm-hmm. And there's people that have expertise in emergency management, mass fatality planning, which once again, we don't have a person like that in our office who can really devote a lot of their time just to that. Because if something happens, Dr. Gorniak, I'm gonna have to be in front of the media, I'm gonna have to be with the family, I'm not gonna be able to be doing autopsies, but someone else needs to be able to organize and orchestrate the whole incident because if the plane crashes, guess what? We still have the 92-year-old person who died in bed. We still have the 14-year-old who overdosed. We still have our day-to-day operations. So we need people to be able to handle our day-to-day operations in addition to whatever mass fatality has occurred.
So, I mean, being prepared, I mean, that's real.
Yes.
What would your advice be to the public?
Oh, to the public? Well, to be prepared, to be aware of social media, and be watching the news on what to do, because we don't want everybody converging onto the medical examiner's office. We want everybody going to the hospitals. So if there's a hotline number to call, so just one, be patient, and two, to know that we will have areas and resources for you to go to. One, either find out if your loved one has been affected by this incident, and two, what to do.
How many people do you employ in your office?
37.
Okay, and they're not all physicians, I assume?
No, there are four medical examiners, forensic pathologists, including, and then myself.
Okay, and then you mentioned social media a moment ago, so I would make an assumption now that given the prevalence of social media in today's world, that would be really maybe the primary way that you would communicate with people in the event of a mass casualty? Right,
not our office per se. We don't have a Facebook account or a Twitter, but the police departments do. Emergency Management Association agencies will be able to put those messaging out via social media.
What would your advice be to any young person out here who's watching who may be interested in becoming a medical examiner? Oh,
just do it. I think it's a fantastic career choice. I would suggest people, don't give up. Go to medical school. It may seem like a long time to study and to train, but also shadow. Right? Because you might think, because you saw something on TV, you think this is great, but you get in the autopsy room and you can't handle it. There's other areas.
That's me. Let me raise my hand.
There's other areas in the forensic fields that doesn't have to deal specifically with autopsies or the medical examiner's office. But anybody, I would really encourage everybody. We have a shortage of forensic pathologists in the country, so just go for it. Call me, shadow me, ask as many questions as you can, and go to medical school.
So now, in terms of men versus women, I would think, most medical examiners, male or female?
Male.
Male.
Yes. It's a male
overwhelming number?
It's a male-dominated field, yes, but we're catching up. Women are.
And black females?
It's an even lower number.
So you'd have to be very unique in this field.
Yes, I am. And so even in Fulton County, I'm the 5th medical examiner at Fulton County history, and the first African-American, first female.
Okay, so, well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us.
Thanks
I've been talking
me.
with Dr. Jan Gorniak, our Chief Medical Examiner for Fulton County, and we'll be right back with my final thoughts. Stay with us as we wrap up today's show. As we wrap up today's show, I want to assure you that as chairman, our office will support any recommendations brought forth by our chief medical examiner as this relates to addressing the suicide problem that is impacting families and our communities. And of course, by all means, we will support efforts to appropriately respond to any mass casualty issue that may occur in Fulton County. And while you may think that one has nothing to do with the other, truth is, in a number of these mass casualty tragedies across the country, in some instances, these individuals turn their weapons on themselves after killing their victims. We don't want that to happen here, and I want you to know that as your chairman, I realize that suicide is a problem that with the help of our chief medical examiner, we hope to educate our citizens by talking about it, dispelling myths, and offering resources. Well, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Please connect with me online to let me know what you think about this topic or any other for that matter. Thank you for your time, and a special thanks to our guest today. We'll see you next time on the Chairman's Circle.